Welcome to Moving Iron with Casey Seymour and Greg Peterson, the podcast for anyone and everyone involved and interested in the business of ag equipment. If you want to understand what trends and market forces are impacting the price of your iron, you've come to the right place. Buckle up, it's time to move some iron.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast. Got Greg Machinery, Pete Peterson on to talk about what's happening in the marketplace. But this edition of the Moving Iron Podcast is brought to you by John Deere. Greg, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing well, Casey. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. It's had some nice weather come through. We've got some rain our way, and it is picking up. I was down in Kansas for a couple of days, and crops down there. I was on the eastern side of the state, so it's a totally different story than the western side of the state. But things looked like they were okay. So it'll be interesting to watch how the wheat plays out. That tell two different sides of the state there. Obviously, western side of the state, it's in bad shape. But if you look at eastern side of the state, there's still some stuff there. So it'll be interesting to watch what all the custom crews have to say once they roll through the eastern part of Kansas.
Right. We're getting some rain up here in Minnesota finally, so catching up a little bit, recharging the soil. So, hopefully that'll make for a good 26.
Hope so. All right, Greg, let's talk a little bit about what's going on in the auction space right now. As you take a look at this last couple of weeks here, what are you seeing that's popping out to you?
Well, I think we're drifting back to a historical norm where you get into late May, June, when generally speaking, there's a little bit of back off in pricing. I do still think we're seeing really good condition, particularly tractors and construction equipment, been very, very strong. That might be the strongest sector we're seeing right now, the heavy equipment out there at hard cash auction pricing, doing very well. But again, just seeing a little bit of the back off. It's like, we don't really know how 26 is going to play out. So some of the big ticket items in different categories can back off from where they were year end into early part of the season. So kind of got a few more examples along those lines. Casey, I know one, we were talking before we started recording with sprayers, and there was a sale Monday kind of out in western North Dakota, had a 20 model John Deere R4045, just over 1,700 engine hours on that thing, and it went for $176,475. And I got looking in our Machinery Pete auction prices, and back 4 months ago in February, market maybe overall just a little bit stronger. We saw an 18 model with the same hours. I think DPA auction sold that one out of like Vermilion, South Dakota, but that was 187. So there you go, 2 years older, same hours, 4 months ago, 187 versus now, that 176. So again, that's kind of what I'm talking about, that little bit of kind of drift off that we used to see that the first 20 plus years I did this, compiling prices, and then COVID and everything and the supply chain mess, the last 7 to 10 years, that trend kind of went away, but it might be coming back again.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. So you start looking at those two machines that roll through. One's 6 years old, one is 8 years old. And I will say that one thing that I have noticed in my career, that as you look at when you get past you start drifting into that older than 7 years old type of thing, 6 to 7 to 8 years old, like that little band right there. That's when you start looking at the year doesn't matter as much as the hours. And as you're kind of walking your way through that, so that could have been some of it there too, just the hour, a little bit of hour difference and those kind of things. But you are right. This time of the year, between end of May through about mid-July, that time frame typically does point towards a slightly softer marketplace. Now, that being said, I've also seen that be one of the hottest times in the world to sell stuff. But typically, historically speaking, this little band of time right now is typically the quote unquote harvest low of the year, right? When you start looking at auction data, right? But from this point forward, you start watching auction values start to change, because now you're starting to see as spring crops get harvested and the fall crops start getting harvested, and you start working into corn, soybeans, those kind of things towards the end of the year. A lot of folks have a really good position in their mind, like, hey, I think we're going to be this, or hey, I think we're going to be that, and they start looking at what adjustments they need to start making as you work your way through that. I will say this: the guys that my dealer friends of mine that I've been talking with around the country, I'm still getting this the last minute kind of rush to buy things. And like, for example, there were a lot of planters that were getting delivered in May still, to guys, and they were used ones that guys had just found, and they've made the decision to pull on, and they were getting delivered in mid-May, so that kind of tells you something that, hey, we're looking for exactly what we want to find for the price we want to pay, and we're not in a rush to do anything, right? If we need to run our planner for one more year, then we're going to do that. But once I find the one I want, and it's exactly what I want, and it's exactly what I want to pay, and the numbers work for trade and everything else all look like, and I'm happy with all that, then I'm moving forward. But up until then, I'm not in a big hurry to do it. I see that across the board.
Exactly. I'm seeing the same thing, Casey. It cuts on condition.
Yeah.
And so when it's like you just said, when it's exactly that item the farmer's been looking for, they'll get aggressive with it. So, I'm thinking Saturday up my way in Minnesota, Winnebago, Minnesota, which is kind of just north of Blue Earth. If you're not familiar, if you're not from our land of 10,000 lakes, it's really good black dirt country, south central Minnesota, just north of I-90. A farm auction there. JJY's Auctioneering had the sale. I think it was Bruce and Sheila Helland, farm retirement sale. But a couple items on that sale jumped out. They had a 21 model John Deere 8R230 with 1,565 hours on it. And that brought 172.5, which when I parsed the data, that's the second highest auction price on an 8R230 with over 1,500 hours in 14 months. It's not any type of record, but it's a very solid hard cash number, I thought. Same sale had a skid steer, a 20 model Bobcat T595. Only had 319 hours on it, so a little unusual there with 6 years old. But that brought 47,895. That just snuck into the top 10 highest auction prices ever on a T595. And the real eye-opener, Casey, this is one I was telling you about before we started recording, but a 14 model Timpty, I know it was a low 40-foot range, brought $42,000 for a 12-year-old grain trailer. Very nice, but to get over 35, up over 40 for that age, again, when people find the quality, you see some prices like this.
Yeah, and it points to it too. Also, kind of what we've talked about here a little bit as well is there's a gap in the middle of the of the inventory space right now. You start looking at that 5 to 12-year-old stuff. That stuff has been picked over pretty well, and it's actually we're at the point now to where what was a 5-star grade A piece of equipment might have been a 4.5-star, 4-star grade A piece of equipment. A couple months ago. Now it's just switched its place. Thing about that I found about that, Greg, that brings the market up with it as we start working your way through that is as that quote unquote lesser condition machinery replaces the really good machinery, conditioned machinery. The price doesn't change, right? If grade A stuff was selling for $50,000, for example, and then the one step below was selling for $40,000, it just steps up now and it's worth $50,000, right? So now it just replaces itself. And we're starting to see some of that happen a little bit, where you're starting to see some of this. I'm not saying junk by any means, but I'm saying like not the premium stuff anymore is starting to bring some higher dollar values, because that's what's, the next man up, right? It's the next best thing that's out there. And that's what, if you want it, this is what it's bringing. We're starting to see a little bit of that too.
Yeah, I think what's playing into exactly what you said, Casey, is that supply issue of used that we keep referring back to, and so much tighter. It's continually tightened over the past 2 years now. And, there'll certainly be some dealers definitely that, still trying to work down inventory levels. But we're at the point when I've actually heard a large dealer say, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I wish I had more good used equipment because I could sell it instantly. And so that tightening does accentuate. And like you say, maybe that tractor that would have been a 6 out of 10 now is maybe a 7.2 out of 10 just because the scarcity. So, for example, again, you drift into the pre-def and it can get emotional and all that stuff or whatever, but doesn't change the fact that on Saturday in Royce City, Texas, which, pretty far south, I saw an 82 model 4440 Deere tractor with 7,000, let's see, it had 7,208 hours on it, power shift, went for 32.5. Now, that made me look to see the average auction price on a 4440 this year, of course, made from 78 to 82, so they're no spring chickens. But the average auction price, Casey, is $28,839 so far this year. That's, if you look on an annual yearly basis, that's the highest auction price ever on a 4440. The record was back in 23, kind of the tail end of that supply chain stuff coming out of COVID, and the average was 27,839. And now it might fall the rest of this year, but we're sitting over 28,000. And when I see a nice one out of Texas, we love our friends in Texas, but I've been doing this 36 and a half years, and it used to be that Mason-Dixon line across about central Missouri. That doesn't apply when you find a nice tractor, which that one was, you see those strong dollars. And my friend Brent Ulmer with Ulmer Auction Service up out of Ashley, North Dakota, he sold 2 John Deere 4630s the last couple months. One was 30,000 and one was 29,975. And they're not collector tractors. They're just good, solid workhorses. And we see the same on the red side. So the dollars are finding the really good condition, dependable equipment that'll still get the job done.
Yeah. Well, there's that old saying, Greg, if you drink enough, anything looks good, right? So that's that. You take a look at some of these things that are out there. So that's
I've only seen one auction. I've only seen one auction, Casey, where actually beer was served at the auction.
I bet you they got more money for that one than they did anywhere else.
Machine Repeat Data said that was a very good sale. I'll just say it was late December of 2011, and it was in Minnesota, and it was 10 degrees below, but the Busch Light was flowing, and that was a very good
keeps you warm. Keeps you warm, Greg. That's all it does.
It does.
Today. Yeah. All right, man. All right, so let's jump over and talk a little bit about what you see happening in some spaces here. So we were talking a little bit before we got started on the sprayer space, what that looked like and where those things were headed. Kind of looking at the overall marketplace for sprayers right now, it does just, I think the sprayers fall in the same place right now. Combines and sprayers typically have an ebb and a flow with each other a little bit. As I look at this stuff, combines typically are doing good, so are sprayers. Combines are doing bad, typically sprayers are doing bad. And I think a couple things for that. One is they fall into that, not as bad as a combine or a chopper or something like that, but their wear part issue thing. And it's not so much that there's a lot of wear parts that they have to worry about, but it's the stuff that they're spraying through those that have the corrosive nature of which and those kind of things where you got to worry about, did I get it cleaned out good and those kind of things. And it's kind of a bigger animal to kind of jump in front of. As I look at the sprayer marketplace right now, I'm seeing obviously there's some late model low stuff out there, but the the R4045s, the older R4038s, you start looking at some of the Patriot sprayers and those kind of things. As you watch that stuff group, what's the volume that if you have a barometer on this all, but what's the volume of some of that older? I'm talking 5 to 7, 5 to 10-year-old sprayers out there in the marketplace. What's that volume look like as you start seeing that come through the auction space?
Well, if we talk sprayers, my head on a volume side, Casey, would run towards, more of the 1, 2, 3-year-old ones we've been seeing jam through the auction market the last couple of years, as dealers were, addressing the issue back in 24 of having quite a bit of excess. So, I would say on the 5 to 7, 8-year-old range, generally that a little bit of that tightening you mentioned at the top of our conversation today, uh, generally speaking, again, versus 2 years ago. One thing I do find really interesting over the years to monitor is when a new model series comes out, and it takes a couple years, and then it starts to filter into the used market. So, like on the sprayer side now, the 412Rs, the 612Rs, as we see more of those, what happens to the model previous, and from a hard cash auction perspective? And we see it with sprayers, definitely see it with combines, uh, and there's some pretty aggressive depreciation going on there in that that 6 to 10 year old age range. Uh, Not to say you can't have a very nice one that come along and set people off and bring a premium at auction, but most of them, like you say, have just kind of are a little bit tired, and it is what it is, and they bring what they bring, but it can be a pretty sharp cliff,
Yeah.
particularly now when the price of new is got so high. So you got that level. Then you got your 412, 612Rs, or your, whatever, the same Patriots. What are they doing hard cash? And then you got your 6 to 8 year old. And it can be kind of jarring. And honestly, that gets back to why I started doing this all those years ago. So you could, don't guess on that stuff, but really, really pin it down to what it's worth. So when one comes along, whether it's at auction or private or dealer, it's like, that's a good number. I can feel good being aggressive buying that thing. Or conversely, like, that one's going pretty high. I should sit this one out. So, now you sat in the chair of, as a used equipment manager, all those years, decades, dealing with that older model series. What are your thoughts on say sprayers here, on like the R series, the R40, 45s, or the same with the Patriots?
Yeah, so no, I mean, to me, I watch those auction prices come through, and to me, they feel strong. They don't. I mean, I'm not shaking my head, going like, "Oh my God, the sky's falling." I'm also not going to sit here and tell you that, man, they're bringing top dollar by any means either. I think they're somewhere in that upper third as far as value goes when you start watching that, historically speaking, right? And one thing I will say this though, and this is something that I've watched for a long time. I have some really smart used equipment guy friends of mine, and they were we used to sit around and talk about stuff all the time. And one guy brought up to me the correlation between 4-wheel drives and sprayers, and I'm like, all right, you got to explain that one to me, because I'm dumb, right? So I'm trying to figure my way through this. And he goes, whenever 4-wheel drives start to take off and run, sprayers fall off, and when sprayers take off and run, 4-wheel drives fall off. And he goes, it's about a 5-year cycle. And I go back and look at my stuff, and sure stuff, right there it is, plain sight, And the only thing I could think of was that it was a switch between about every 5 to 7 years or so. These no-tillers have to go back in and kind of rip the soil up a little bit, kind of get things kind of squared away, kind of get, break through a few things. And you saw a peak in 4-wheel drives with the horsepower for tillage and those kind of things. And it's interesting. It would be interesting to study to go back and look, see now where because I know 4-wheel drives aren't doing well at all. I mean, that's not a very big demand market out there right now. I'm not saying they're not doing well. That's not accurate, but they're not top of the list right now of things that people are out buying. So is that correlation back into play? Are we going to continue to see this ebb and flow with the sprayer versus 4 drive market? Now, that being said, I also look at these 1 and 2 year old sprayers that are sitting in the market, and I don't see a lot of movement with them right now either. And that's so. But I could say that, insert whatever 1 to 2 year old piece of equipment, and you're not seeing a bunch of people jumping up and down and go get one of those. So, which it's direct correlators back to price. And I think the thing about pricing a piece of used equipment from a new one, there is the math that shows the depreciation and those kind of things, but there's also the the math that shows what someone's willing to pay for it on that. When you get to that used equipment level, right? If a new one is X, then it should be Y. That's a pretty good, easy math problem to come up with. But the issue that we see right happening today is a new one is, I'm just throwing a number right here, $700,000, and I go do the math, and you kind of figure out, okay, or say first year depreciation is 25%, and you're looking at $175,000 difference off of that. So that puts you down in that $625,000 range as a book value, right? And you start working your way through it to where your margin expectations and reconditioning and everything else. Say you're at 650. Well, if I can buy one for 700,000 or buy your used one for 650, which one are you going to buy, right? Especially when dollars are that big, right? So now you start looking at, that's got to be, does it need to be 500,000? Does it need to be 450? Like, what's that number need to be to make a used guy enticed enough to come and buy it? And I'll pick on class 11, class 10 combines. Looks like to me the buying public's about $600,000 is about all they're willing to pay for something like that on a 1-year-old machine, based on auction history over the last 2.5 years. So when you're pricing that machine, it comes back into retail. Yes, the dealer's going to get a little more money than auction, right? That's going to happen, but it's not hundreds of thousands of dollars more than auction, right? Those are there's a level there that caps off that says, I'm willing to give you more because you're a dealer and the things that you're going to do for me comparatively. So that's the tricky thing right now when you look at this marketplace.
Well, there they are, mocking you.
See you next year, loser.
That weedy area that's got you thinking, man, I hate that spot. Wish I'd sprayed better. Get the last laugh with a sprayer upgrade from John Deere. Precision upgrades that can increase your sprayer's performance, like Exact Apply, advanced nozzles to give you more control at more speeds. It's just one of the many precision upgrades you'll find at johndeere.com. Now, let's see who's laughing.
Looking for more accuracy, more productivity from your current planter? Let's get exact with precision upgrades from John Deere. Start with Exact Emerge and get accurate singulation and spacing at 10 miles per hour. Or choose Exact Shot to promote early root growth and cut fertilizer costs. And with Furrow Vision, save time by verifying seed depth right from your cab. Visit johndeere.com/planner upgrades and see why nothing runs like a deer.
Well, I think, you're right, Casey. And imagine, okay, let's just do a little thought exercise here. Imagine from the way things are, the way farmers feel right now, imagine if we had as much used inventory on dealer lots as we had exactly 2 years ago. How auction prices, right? We'd be singing a different story.
Right.
So the supply, that's that new normal. You coined that term quite a while ago, and we keep talking about it. I think it's held up the auction prices. So I heard something the other day from an auction. I won't say who or where, but it was Machinery Pete. It was like, okay, how was the sale today? And it was like tillage and sprayers were awful. Tractors were good. Now, I've heard that kind of verbiage for 30, and you have too, for 36 years, the general, and I get it. I mean, we're humans. That's the way we talk. But that general, I never want to hang my hat on just a wide general statement. So again, on the sprayer, specifically on the sprayer topic, again, let's look at that R4045, two similar machines. The 18 model brought 187 in February. The 20 model on Monday just went for 176.5. So that, to me, that's more accurate than saying, oh, the sprayers were awful. It's like, no, they've slid a bit the last 4 months, hard cash. Totally, we see these ups and downs. But you identified one of the biggest driver in the whole thing is the cost of new. And that, dictates, even when dollars are tight, if you got 500 acres, you got 5,000, you got 50,000 acres, you got to do what you got to do. And to do that, you want and need reliable equipment. Now, right now, farmers are definitely in the use mindset. And the interesting thing to me is the supply of used is tightened so much that I haven't seen this particular moment before. When we went back a decade ago, plus 13, 14, 15, 16, there was this overhang of supply that it didn't tighten like it has now. So it's just a really interesting time to try and figure out. I think that's why we're seeing now like that 42K on that Timpty, that 12-year-old Timpty. It's like, well, that doesn't make sense. It's like, well, it kind of does if you consider where we're at on the supply side and what a new one costs.
Right. Yep. So I think I need a correction here. I think I said 650 in my last example, and it should have been 550. So all the math nerds out there, I corrected myself. So
you just proved our point, though. That's the numbers are so high.
Yeah.
That 550, 650, 750. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
So, but the key factor is it's depreciation is depreciation. That's what it is. But when I first started doing this, I'll pick 9770 combine, brand new in 2008 or 9. I can't remember when it was. It was like $235,000. It was $250,000 for a brand new one. And now so you do your depreciation off of that, your standard depreciation off of that, and let's say it's about 25% or so, and you're looking at $50,000, right? That's that was enough swing to like, all right, so I can for $175,000 or $180,000, I can get a used one, a 1-year-old used one, or I can pay $250,000 for a new one, right? That spread was enough to keep people there, right? Well, what I saw happen across the spectrum coming out of COVID is that those same kind of practices were still being employed, and it was your $150,000, $100,000, $50,000, $75,000 back of a new one. In theory, it makes sense. Dollar per hour wise, it makes sense. But when you look at if a new one is $800,000 or $700,000, and you're going to be $75,000 less than that, I mean, which one are you going to buy, Greg? You know what I mean?
Well, I heard a farmer podcast last week, Casey. It was really interesting. It was sort of a younger guy. He looked to me like 30. And he was saying, we bought our S790, and this could be any color, red, yellow, it doesn't matter. It's just, and he's like, boy, I'm sort of thinking, wouldn't it be nice to have just two solid 9770s? Mm-hmm. And yes, maybe they can't do capacity-wise, but it's getting into the math is math, what you just said.
Right.
It's like, and that's, to me, I won't call it a danger, but this period is stretching out a farmer on the grain side, being under this pressure for this length of time is stretching out. And with social media and podcasts and YouTube and all this stuff, farmers are talking to each other. And again, it's that, do I need all the new equipment? And to me, it's chatter that I've been hearing for almost 4 decades doing this. Just like the chatter of, oh, that sale was terrible or the sprayers were terrible. It's like, well, no, let's talk numbers. So the real test to me will be whenever corn and beans do go up, then do you stick with, from the farmer side, do you stick with no? Or no, it's like, my tax bill is going to be pretty darn big this year. Maybe that new combine or new planter would be good. We'll have to wait and see on that one. But I've never heard this much chatter for farmers almost talking about going backwards with equipment. Just give me that slightly older, smaller machine because I can get it for, whatever, $82,000. And hey, I'll buy 2 of those. And if one goes down, then hey, we're still happy as a clam. Versus the numbers that are what they are on the new side are a couple years old.
You want to talk a hypothetical? Here's a hypothetical for you, Greg.
Okay.
Good friend of mine came talk to me about this probably, almost a year ago, probably now. And when he started talking to me about it, in my mind, this is where my mind went immediately, right? So now on a Fendt tractor, they already have this on a Fendt tractor. I can go buy a new Fendt tractor, and I think if I can go from a 500 horsepower tractor all the way down to a 380 horsepower tractor. I can adjust those horsepower as needed so I can have one machine do multiple things across different platforms, right? Which is brilliant, right? Because I mean, if I need 380 horsepower, 400 horsepower, and that's going to give me the maximum efficiency to pull this piece of equipment, then I don't have to, lug my tractor and waste a bunch of fuel and those kind of things. So it kind of tunes it in. That's something you can find on a Fendt tractor. But if you're looking at with Autonomy coming around, and I'm looking at my lot out here, and I see a sea of tractors sitting out there, and I look at them and I say, you know what? I'm a farmer. I don't need a tractor 365 days out of the year. I need a tractor for, you pick the number of days, 60 days, right? I'm going to go plant my crop, take 60 days to plant my crop, right? Or I need to go harvest this. I need one for grain cart. I need, 30 days or whatever. So grand scheme of the thing, I need 60 to 70 days a year. I need a tractor of tillage and everything else, right? Throw a number out there. But what I'm going to go out and buy is I'm going to buy a tractor that's going to give me the most horsepower for my biggest job, and then I'm going to adjust it down as I need to as I come my way through there. When I start looking at autonomy, and I start thinking about, all right, I need to have a 300 horsepower tractor. I go out and grab a tractor, make it a 300 horsepower tractor. I adjust it to make it be a 300 horsepower tractor, take it out there and run. Or hey, I need 500 horsepower or 400 horsepower, whatever the number might be, and I adjust that to make it go run. I think this is the first time I can point to a situation where I think you could make renting equipment and the ag side work the way you need it to work, because you're not taking like an 8R370, for example, and you have this sea of 8R370s, right? But this guy needs a 340, right? Or this guy needs a 295 or whatever the number is, right? Like all these machines that you can pull through there now is I can start taking machines as I need them, put them where I need to deploy them at, and I can rent them as I need rented, and then I can come back in and set them out. This only works in autonomy, though, in my opinion, because it's the number of machines that you can get out at one time versus the number of machines that you can set there instead of a one-off situation.
Right.
That dramatically changes the market. It dramatically changes value, right? And it dramatically changes what happens in the auction space of these machines. So as you start putting those things together, I look at that as a game changer that could happen. When autonomous tractors roll out and things become a bigger part of that, that's an immediate game changer if you go down that path.
Yeah, no, well, that's quite a hypothetical. Yeah, that's I guess where my head runs with that, Casey, is it's the old saying, things are as they are until they aren't.
Right.
And so now, like most of our listeners are in rural U.S. or Canada, but I live in Rochester, Minnesota. We got 130,000 people here, Mayo Clinic and whatever, great community. But young people increasingly don't want to own cars.
Right.
You get into Minneapolis or Chicago or New York City, but just when we were growing up, I mean, the thought of a car was freedom, and and now, mostly because of the cost, but it's a little bit of that, like, you know what? I'll just Uber wherever I gotta go. Why would I buy a $60,000 car and saddle myself with that debt when I can just click on my phone and here's my ride and I go get my groceries? And now in rural America, we can think, well, that's crazy, but it's literally happening all around us. And when you drift into our world, like say, it's the cost of these machines. I always, where's the end of the rainbow? How high can they go before farmers are business people? They have to make it work. So those hypotheticals, as autonomous gets better, yeah, there will be different ways to approach it. And, we'll see how it all plays out. But the car thing I just find fascinating. That there's data that more young people are not even getting their driver's license at 16. Now, we were waiting until our 16th birthday to schedule the driving test that afternoon so I can get on the wheels and, go be free, right? But it's just a different world now. So
if you weren't abusing the learner's permit thing that you had in your pocket,
yes,
I may or may not have done that, Greg. So
yes. Oh, well, I had friends on the farm, driving when they were 12, 13. Yeah, I mean, that's our reality in rural America. And some of these things. This is why when I started off in business, my dad just told me, "Hey, one of the best pieces of advice I could give you is keep your head on a swivel, because if you don't pay attention to macro trends developing around us, whether it's related to food, whether it's related to equipment, I mean, you're running blind, and running blind is stupid, and you're gonna make poor business decisions long term if you're not aware of these things." So again, all this farmer chatter about, if I just had 2 or 3 older sprayers or combines or tractors they're paid for, that's real. That's how people are feeling. And, how the market can fit that need is going to be fascinating to see how it all plays out going forward. I've been doing this 36 years. I wonder, so 36 years from now, it'll be 60. I was up too late last night. It'll be fascinating to see how it all plays out.
2072.
And I'll be 86 or 96 in 36 years. I hope I'm still around tracking this stuff.
It'll be interesting to watch it move, because that to me is a complete game changer in the market. Now, works on tractors. I still you're going to have to show me how it works in combines, because there's too much downtime on a combine. Once you've harvested your crop, you're kind of done. So 300 days a year doesn't do anything. So how do you do that unless you have some machine that integrates into it and it's a combine when it needed to be a combine, then it's not.
15, 20 years ago, like you said, a new one cost what? And you said 2008 it cost like
235, 240, 250, something like that.
Right. So that was a big nut back then, but now when it's whatever triple plus, sitting all those days, it just makes you think of the whole thing a little differently, doesn't it? Right. Potentially.
Yeah, and I mean, the interest clock's ticking for everybody, right? Whether it's sitting on a dealer's lot or sitting in your barn, one of the two things. That clock is ticking, So anyway. All right, Greg, I feel like we depressed people enough for one day. Let's go ahead and wrap it there. When you look at when people are looking to have you come speak at an event or come by an auction and film it for Machinery Pete TV, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, just hit our website, folks, machinerypete.com, our phone number, email on the bottom, or message me on social media. We'll be heading out down in the Dallas area, end of the month, June 23rd. Great heavy equipment auction by Joey Martin Auctioneers. I'm excited to get down to Texas for that one. Last time I was in Dallas, I left my hotel room at 8 in the morning, and it was 108 degrees. So I'm hoping it's not quite that hot again, but hey, it'll be what it's going to be, and it'll be great fun to visit our friends down in Texas.
Yeah, Dallas is get all kinds of cool stuff happen to you in Dallas if you're up for the challenge. So check it out. It'll be fun.
Yeah, a Viking fan.
What did you say that was?
The cowboy country. What's that?
What did you say that was?
June 23rd. We'll be down there. I think it's north of Dallas, but just go to joeymartinauctioneers.com. Joey told me about the sale 3-4 months ago and said, Pete, this is just excellent stuff. I think it's a contractor maybe retiring type of sale.
Okay.
And again, construction equipment's been very strong, so that'll be a really fascinating day down there.
Right on. Yeah. Greg, appreciate you being on the podcast. We'll catch you again next time.
Sounds great, Casey. Have a good week.
All right, that'll do it for this edition of the Moving Iron Podcast. I want to thank Greg, Machinery Pete Peterson, for being on this edition of the Moving Iron Podcast. I also want to thank John Deere for being the sponsor as well. My name is Casey Seymour. If you want to find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever else I'm at, it's either at Moving Iron Podcast or Moving Iron LLC. You can find me there. You can also go to the Ag web page, look under the podcast section. You're going to find the audio version of that there. You can also watch the video version of this over on the Farm Journal YouTube channel. Check it out there. Moving Iron Summit's coming up here in Louisville. If you're a dealer and you want to attend that, that's September 22nd, 23rd, 24th. Check that out there if you're interested in that. All the information is on AgWeb under the events page. You can find all the information there about speakers, program, the whole deal. So it's all there, how to book rooms, all the stuff's right there. So check that out. So looking forward to that, to everybody coming to that again this year. Special thanks to all the people on the backside that make this thing happen every month. So I appreciate it, or every week. Thank you for all that you do for that. So with that, I'm Casey Seymour. Let's go move some iron, folks. Out.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next week. And remember, Moving Iron is available on Farm Journal's YouTube channel and anywhere podcasts are found. So until next time, let's move some iron.